Yo, 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 Miss Q. It is week 9 of the weekly Waspel with your usual host, Anthony Perez. I'm here with,
Gabby. Hello.
Jaden McKellar.
and a new special guest to the weekly Waspel. Hopefully, he'll be a new one and only.
Riley Malasada.
And today, it is week 9 of the weekly Waspel. Now, guys, what did you get from this week's gospel reflection?
Um, I got that we should be humble and when we act on things, we should do it with a purpose and not just because it's like we're told to.
How about you, Jaden?
Honestly, I agree with Gabby. Like this gospel in particular, it talks about being humble without having like the negative sides of it. It just in all it just shows like blatantly. You got to be humble. You got to be nice. Like you can't just like expect yourself to be like center of everything. You got to be humble. Got to be nice. Got to be kind.
Amen, amen. That's a really big message that we've always been seeing. Riley, what do you think?
Overall, there's one thing I would like to bring up about this that I learned. It brings me back to the quote, "It is easier for a rich man to enter." No, that's the wrong one. "It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven." The reason why this reminds me of this is because in the gospel it says, "Whoever wishes to be first among you will be slave of all." That is akin to the rich of the earth trying to go into heaven. They will not be able to unless. Be quiet. I am trying to podcast here. That is like the. First, let me explain what the eye of the needle is for a camel. In the desert, to get across certain parts, camels must get down onto their knees, lay down, and be dragged under the needle because it's such a low passage point. The reason why it is easier for a camel to do that than for a rich man to enter heaven is because first, in order for him to enter heaven, he must humble himself. He must get down on his knees and humble himself to the Lord before he's able to enter heaven. So overall, that is the message behind this gospel in my interpretation. You must humble yourself in order to be one with God and to get into heaven. Thank you for your time.
Amen. This is a beautiful gospel reflection. I like how all of us just like this is a pretty straightforward weekly gospel, as we always have been seeing this theme. It's been a really relevant topic where it's a repetitive reminder that we gotta be humble, just like Jesus humbled himself. God didn't need to, or well, what Christians believe is that God didn't need to go down, be a human in order to save us, but he willingly did so. He humbled himself, brought his only son, and died on the cross to save us sinners because he loves his creations. And I feel like this sort of reflection that Jesus and God himself is supposed to be servants to us, just like how in a previous weekly gospel, how we noticed that Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. It just reminds us that Jesus is not above us, but he is here to love us, to hold us into his arms, and to bring us up into the kingdom of heaven for us Christians and bring us into salvation. This is another repetitive theme, but I feel like it is always an important thing as we head into Advent, the season of Advent, and know that Jesus is coming to be born and to save us. Thank you, Miss Q.
Not yet. Hold on. I
Oh,
still have
okay.
something.
Yeah,
I still have something to say.
go.
Um, I just like sure. Yeah, it's all about humility. I like to agree with this one a lot more. But there is still one question I want to ask. Is that
Of course.
I've seen a bunch of um, I've seen a lot of themes about humility and all that, but I've also seen a lot of themes about like taking things to the extreme, like taking his words to the extreme. But um, I just want to know why he makes such a big deal of something simple as asking a question. Like, yeah, sure, he did ask. Like, sure, like his disciples did ask if like, is it okay if like we sit people down next to you? But like instead of just simply saying, "Oh yeah, that's okay," you don't have to really ask. He goes on a whole show about it, like a lecture. I don't know why he does that. Like he could just say like, "Oh, you don't have to ask." Like we're both the same in the end of the day. Like he could have just said that blatantly, but instead he goes on a whole lecture for such a simple question.
I understand where you're coming from because I do feel like when it comes to when Jesus responds to the disciples, like, oh, blah blah blah, this question, like, he does always have like this lengthy answer, but I do feel like he does that to drive his point home, so they fully get like the full picture, so that they're not just
Yeah,
like,
but at this point in the gospel, it's like they already know he's Jesus. They're gonna listen to him.
well, they're still gonna have some hesitations because since they're not Jesus, they still have human traits
That's
that
fair.
cause them to doubt. So
Yeah.
I just see it as Jesus really trying to drive his point home. Even if it goes to the extremes, it really just helps to, uh, prove his what.
Prove his point more
Yeah. I didn't-
efficiently. I guess that makes sense.
It helps. I see. I'm not Jesus. I don't know his reasoning. None of us will ever know his reasoning. That's why the readings. That's the Paschal mystery. It is 100% a mystery to us. We will never understand, and that is why the reason why I believe he provides these lengthy answers is to make his point to the people who know of him but still choose to not believe him. People who are deep in their practice of what I like to call, I brought it up many times before, but it's willful ignorance. Seeing a truth and saying that's not true. Seeing this podcast and no, this is a TV show, not a podcast. See, I think it's it's essentially for Jesus to make his point to people, to try and get people who willingly deny him, get them to understand what he wants to do for us as humans, what he wants to, his, yeah, trying to get his message across essentially.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And then,
It just seems a little extra, is all.
and then one more thing I'm thinking about how like how he can go through the extremes is because I suppose you can say that when it's technically our life is an extreme thing because it'll factor to whether or not in at least in the Catholic belief whether we go to heaven or hell. So in bringing out those extremes, it helps to kind of what's the word like help people fully understand like, hey, just because you're living carefree right now doesn't mean these actions won't affect you later on in life. So in implementing those extremes, it just helps to resonate with us more like personally in a way and just more deeper, so we truly just are like, all right, we gotta lock in.
That's fair.
That ties into the I forget where it comes from, but it was mentioned in the Bible that whatever you lose on earth, you gain in heaven, and whatever you gain on earth, you lose in heaven. So it's a reminder for us that we have what we have now, but we never know. We can't bring anything into heaven. We didn't bring it. We didn't bring anything to earth, or we didn't bring anything from heaven. We'll never bring anything into heaven. So be grateful for what you have now. Be humble. That is sneeze.
Amen.
That is sneeze.
Jaden, you have any more stuff?
Nope. That's really about it.
Perfect. Of course, it's really understandable to get confused with our gospels or with any of Jesus's teachings. Of course, it's pretty complex sometimes, and that's why we need to have these conversations so that we can interpret the gospel and also follow what the church tries to point out as the theme of Jesus' message within his parables, teachings, or the gospels.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad we have these talks too. I get to learn more.
Yay!
Good discussion.
Okay, Miss Q, I think we got in everything. I hope that you enjoyed this Week 9 Weekly Waspel episode with our usual hosts,
Jaden Pikelli.
Gabby.
our new host.
Riley Malasada.
and Anthony. Bye, Miss Q.
Bye.